Ahzek Ahriman. I stride the galaxy akin to a god. Reality is my plaything, the forces of its warp and weft. I can restructure all I witness to my will. I know 1,000 secrets, a vast array of names, rules, and objections. I am the fulcrum of destiny wherever I tread. Yet there is one thing I cannot control, cannot master, cannot abide. My dreams. Most who know my name think I am the epitome of all that is wrong in the universe. Witch, sorcerer, heretic, all epithets I am accosted with, but own. I behold the rotting corpse of the empire I helped win so long ago. It exists in no small part due to my own labours, mine and my brothers of the 1,000 suns. Yet I do wonder why they defend it so ardently, these corpse worshippers. Their empire is a festering adult cadaver in comparison to the dream for which I strode out. Yet all of this does not stop them, denude them of their power. My dreams. I see myself with my colleagues. We are performing the ritual, the rubric. My mightiest work, my greatest art, my most terrible hubris. I look on as if I am another, for in the dream I am. And I witness my own error, my own nemesis, my own failure. The power rises, and I see the temporal, atmospheric, and etheric disturbances as I reach the climax of the rite. I look so powerful, so righteous, so certain. And it happens. I tie out the last strands of energy, form the last liturgies on my tongue, and bellow them into the air, and it begins. But I do not witness it as myself. I experience the change as one of the victims of my own incompetence, my own arrogance. I am one of the many, not the few. I am one of the marines, not the wizards who perform the rite. And my flesh is burning. But not from one source, not from one place, impact or assault. I am burning. Every last muscle, sinew, hair, tooth, eye even. All of the atoms in my body burn at once. A conflagration so spontaneous and complete that within seconds I am nothing but ash. But the pain, the feeling of betrayal, the smashing of my psyche, my soul, as much as my body, this I cannot escape. My mind, my being, my sentience is sent elsewhere. I am falling, forever falling, in darkness without distraction, without respite, without relief. I am falling. And I will never stop falling. Nothing around me, nothing above, below, or to the side of me. Darkness all. And yet my stomach always tells me, I am falling. My mind consumes itself as I have no point of reference, no escape. Nothing but the memories coming back at me in jarring segments, without context, without meaning. I see what could be another's life, another's experience, another's sensations and deeds. I become rubric. I wake, my mind back under my control again. I despise this dream, this curse, this constantly calling night spectre. What have I done? I did what I thought would be the only thing I could to save my legion, my brothers. Yet I was a fool, a child playing with powers beyond my ken. I've learned so much since then, yet still the final keys escape me. A test is this, a gauntlet thrown down by the Lord of Change. I have striven for so long, left no stone uncovered, no line of inquiry unexplored. Yet it is only when something happens that the dreams return. Something of moment, something my mind will not allow me to ignore. And thus I identify the reason for the return of the spectre. Ivrain, the she-eldar, a worshipper, nay, a herald of the newest god, the eldar god of the dead, Inyad. We confronted each other. But in the tides of battle, what did I see? The impossible. Hope. For she managed to restore some of my brethren to life, proper life, not dust and degradation. With but the wave of her hand she reconstituted them, made them new again, brought them back from being automatons filled with the science of time. Perhaps she is the key to the conundrum. Or perhaps she is a foil placed in my path by my very own lord, Tzeentch. As I get closer to a goal it does not wish me to attain so quickly. Perhaps. The most profound and important of all words when one treads the path of the Lord of Change, the master of the occult. Perhaps. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important faces of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to introduce the very basics on one of the most complex and interesting of the characters in this entire setting. Of course, I speak of the Lord of Mysteries, the Archwizard himself, Ahzek Ahriman of the Thousand Suns. Now I will note that this is a very beginner's guide to this character, and in the future we shall build on our knowledge and thus appreciation of Ahzek, for he is indeed a conundrum unto himself. Usually far more restrained than many of his peers, more grounded, yet he was a magician responsible for what may be the most bold and complex ritual the galaxy has ever witnessed. The rubric of Ahriman. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote Ahriman. Knowledge is power, but power is nothing without purpose. You may hold in your hand the power to remake all things, but if you do not know what you would change, then you hold nothing at all. Ahriman of the Thousand Suns. Ahriman is the most powerful sorcerer of the Thousand Suns. An exile from his own legion, he is doomed to wander the Eye of Terror and beyond in search of knowledge. Wielding the black staff of Ahriman, and possessed of knowledge unequaled outside of the most exalted of demons, he is a figure of terrifying power. At his will, armies of lesser sorcerers, warp-animated rubricae, and countless other slaves to darkness make war across time and space. Uncounted souls have burned as the price for his need for forbidden knowledge, a need which has driven him since the earliest days of his legion's damnation. In the time before the Horus Heresy, when the Emperor still walked among his sons, Ahzek Ahriman was chief librarian of the 15th Legion of the Legiones Astartes, the Thousand Suns. Under the leadership of Magnus the Red, the Thousand Suns explored the limits of knowledge and psychic ability. To be a Thousand Sun was not simply to be a warrior, but to be a scholar, a savant, an adept of the arcane and the transcendental. Where others fought the Emperor's wars with bolter and blade alone, the Thousand Suns conjured lightning from the air, burnt armies in typhoons of pyromantic fire, and cracked the walls of citadels with the power of their minds. As they conquered, so too did they amass knowledge, building great libraries of rediscovered lore, and plundering the learning of lost worlds. Even as they ascended to the heights of knowledge, they were cast down. In the Age of Strife, Old Night, psykers had cast a long shadow on mankind, and the Thousand Sons' fixation on occult knowledge drew the attention of the other legions. Censured by the Emperor, the Thousand Sons were forbidden to explore or wield the arts that they had spent so long cultivating. But the Thousand Sons could not resist the power of the warp, and broke the Emperor's decree. In response, the might of the Space Wars Legion was unleashed on the Thousand Sons' homeworld of Prospero. In the burning ruin of their crystal cities, with the dead littering the shores of blood-stained seas, the Thousand Sons turned to the warp, and the warp heard their call. It is said that the skies of Prospero became fire, the seas acid, and that the shrieks of demons rolled around the shattered pyramids of their cities. As the psychic storm broke, the surviving Thousand Sons were ripped out of existence and transported through time and space to a planet within the Eye of Terror, the planet of the Sorcerers. Master of the Rubric. Reality in the Eye of Terror is a twisted and mutilated thing. Within its ragged bounds, the lords of physics are slaved to the whims of the warp. Dreams and thoughts reshape matter. Demons walk unbound, and time flows like the currents of a storm-churned sea. Within this realm of nightmares and possibility, the Thousand Sons made their home. Unfettered by the restrictions of mortal lore or base reality, their sorcerer's powers climbed ever higher, but as their power grew, they began to change. Mutations seethed through the Thousand Sons, fusing flesh and armor, melting the features of once noble warriors into twisted horrors. Ahriman watched as his battle brothers devolved, and knew that he could not allow his legion to fall further. In secret, he drew together a cabal of the most powerful of his brothers. Some came reluctantly, but saw that there was no choice. Some came wholeheartedly, believing in Ahriman without question. Others were drawn to him by desperation, knowing that time was running out. But all shared Ahriman's hope that, together, they could save the Thousand Sons. Drawing on the Book of Magnus, Ahriman created the rubric, a spell that would undo the changes wrought upon the flesh of the Thousand Sons, and shield them from such mutations in the future. At last, their great work prepared, the Cabal unleashed the rubric. Demons howled and laughed over the towers of the planet of the Sorcerers. Sheets of multicolored lightning descended from the skies. Darkness became light, light darkness. The rubric touched each of the Thousand Sons, and in that moment, every one of them was remade. The mutation wrecking the Legion vanished, burned away in the rubric's fire, but what remained was not what the rubric had intended nor expected. Those whose psychic powers had been weak or non-existent had become spirits sealed in sigil-covered armor. Inside their shells, the echoes of their souls howled and rattled in voices of dust. These were the rubricae. Those who had possessed greater power still lived, but found their abilities multiplied and increased. Looking on the results of his attempt to save his legion, Ahriman saw that he had both succeeded in every way and failed utterly. The Book of Magnus. The Book of Magnus was created by the Primarch of the Thousand Sons during the Great Crusade. Written both by Magnus's own hand and the hands of mind-slaved serfs, it was the summation of his knowledge and understanding. In the wake of the Thousand Sons' fall, the Book of Magnus became a book unbound by physical laws. The knowledge within its pages crawls as though alive, constantly changing and constantly growing. If a mortal could open its pages twice and live, he would never find its contents the same. There have been several copies of the Book of Magnus, or at least, it has manifested several times. Such is its warp-infused nature that it may be a single book existing in many places and times. Ahriman possessed a copy of the Book of Magnus before his exile, and others are known to have existed. Callimachus, once scribe to Magnus the Red, fled the burning of Prospero with a partial copy. Others may exist, but if so, their mark on history has long been burnt away and consigned to oblivion. Exile of the Thousand Sons. As the echo of the rubric faded, Magnus the Red descended from his tower to confront Ahriman and his cabal. Some say that in that moment, Ahriman pronounced himself satisfied, and that Magnus's wrath was only diverted by the intervention of other powers. In a realm of lies, the truth cannot be known, but the outcome of that last meeting is certain. Ahriman and all those who stood with him were banished from the planet of the Sorcerers for all eternity. Within the Eye of Terror, what one soul may live as an eye blink, another might experience as many lifetimes. Within such a realm of paradox, questions such as loyalty and truth dissolve in the screams of delusions made real. To walk the stars in such a place is to be reborn. Mighty warlords become slaves, and mortals ascended to sit beside the dark gods of chaos. In this realm, Ahriman walked alone, cut from the legion he had sought to save, doomed to an existence on the margins of sanity. Some say that, in this time, he lived 9,000 lives of mortals, took truths from the lips of demons, and became lost in paths of dreams. How long Ahriman wandered the Eye of Terror after his banishment is a question that can have no answer. Time is a fragile thing in the warp's grip. No matter the truth, Ahriman rose from the ashes of the rubric and the shame of exile with renewed purpose. Understanding and knowledge had always been the fire at the core of Ahriman's soul, and so it was still. The rubric had failed, but its intent was untarnished, and what could have been the cause of his failure but imperfect knowledge. With pure understanding and perfect knowledge, Ahriman could complete the salvation of his legion. Seeker of impossible knowledge. Across 1,000 worlds, Ahriman has sought the keys to save what he has already destroyed. The scars of his obsession have made his name a curse in the mouths of humans and aliens alike. Scraps of lore, artifacts both obscure and profane, and rare souls draw him like a raven to a corpse. To the eldar, he is the carrion scribe who eats the souls of their dying race for secrets. To the inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus, he is the lightning rod which brings a storm of demons. Amongst the servants of chaos, he is a flame of power and trickery, as likely to burn those drawn to his light as to illuminate them. A master of subtle manipulation, Ahriman has seeded cults on 100 worlds, and bent the desires of the powerful to achieve his ends. With conspiracies and plots spread across the galaxy, he coils between them, a puppet master pulling invisible strings. When such subtle means are impossible, he wages a sorcerer's war, forcing armies to kneel with visions of terror, shattering war machines with invisible forces, and ripping the souls from mighty heroes. He knows the true names of 9 times 9 times 9 demons, and possesses pacts which can bring armies flocking to his call. Warlords have burned at his command, billions have fallen to the hunger of the warp, and reality has bled at the fury of his power. Amongst Ahriman's countless atrocities, there are those that stand as true testaments to his subtlety, power, and ruthlessness. The Harvest of Calliope. Calliope was a world of lost knowledge, an entire planet given over to the archiving of records from the earliest days of the Imperium all the way to its uncertain present. Stacks of rotting parchment filled caverns extending far beneath its crust. Data spool stations ringed its orbits from pole to pole, and its cities sprawled around the Index vaults. Every soul on Calliope existed for the archive, from the hunters who stalked vermin in the deep parchment stacks, to the scribes who fought for control of the hundreds of contradictory indexes. All were bound to the ecology of the archive. So it had been for a time since before any could remember, and so it seemed things would continue until something changed. A faction arose within the cast of indexes. This faction called for the unification of all the indexes into an endlessly extended formula. They called themselves the Summation. Where the idea had first come from, none was certain, but once it took hold it bloomed like a flower in sunlight. The Summation's power grew generation by generation, until its rule of Calliope was uncontested. Centuries passed and billions labored to further the summation's goal. At last, they succeeded. On the day of the Emperor's ascension, in the High Hall of Indexes, a scribe wrote the final line of symbols to complete the formula, and in that instant, Calliope fell silent. When an Imperial ship arrived at Calliope a decade later, it found a few starved people living amongst the dry corpses of the dead. None of the survivors could remember anything for more than a few seconds. Stranger still, the great archives were blank, every data store empty and every page of parchment bare. The only mark remaining to tell of the algorithmic seed Ahriman planted and then harvested millennia later was a single image hovering in the lost memories of the servitors' blasted minds. The image of a figure in a horned helm wreathed in flame, stepping from a wound in the air. The death of Dynaxis. Ahriman had long sought the skull of Lepidus, a dead hero of the Second Black Crusade, for reasons that remain his own. The skull, dipped in silver and engraved with 10,000 words of detestation, lay in the polar shrine city of Dynaxis. A conspiracy to obtain the skull by guile had already failed, so Ahriman turned to more direct means. Since the end of the Scouring, countless billions have fought and died in the shadows of the Eye of Terror. For almost 8 millennia, the remains of many of these honored dead lay on Dynaxis. Heaps of charred bones, the serene bodies of martyrs, and the polished skulls of space marines all came to the Maelstrom world. On the surface of Dynaxis, the plains of bones extended from shrine city to shrine city, and grew ever deeper with each passing year. The cities themselves were built from the skulls and bones of the most heroic dead. So sacred and revered was Dynaxis that a dozen Space Marine chapters maintained honor guards and bastions on its surface. Star fortresses ringed its approaches, and millions of troops stood sentinel over the skulls of those who had died to hold the darkness in abeyance. Across the reaches of space, Ahriman burned worlds and sent souls shrieking into the warp. As the murdered worlds spun into alignment with each other, they created an arcane pattern in the stars, with Dynaxis at its heart. As the great design locked into place, Dynaxis' sun was pulled from reality, leaving a howling wound in the sky of the mausoleum world. Blood and fire spread across the heavens. The bones of the dead howled the last thoughts of their lives, and rainbow fire crawled across the ossuary towers. Demons poured through the hole that had been the sun, tumbling onto the mausoleum world like falling stars. The defenders screamed as the children of chaos ate their souls. Amidst the slaughter, Ahriman appeared outlined in lightning, ringed by sorcerers and rubric. Power rolled from the circle of sorcerers, and they strode through the battle, killing the defenders and dissolving demons with arcane fire. The chapter honor guard came against him, but were reduced to ashes and silent screams with a gesture. Firebane, last warlord of the Legio Officium, strode to war from its shrine. The cry of its war horns echoed across the damned world, and its weapons burned a path towards Ahriman's circle. Drawing together the power of his fellow sorcerers, Ahriman forced the war machine to its knees, before pulling the core of its plasma reactor through its carapace. At last, Ahriman held the skull of Lepidus in his hand, as the battle between men and demons raged around him. Raising the skull to his eyes, he found the one word he sought etched on the skull's surface. Letting the skull fall from his hand, he and his forces vanished, leaving the world of bones to the howls of demons and the cries of the dying. Fate's End. 10 millennia have passed in the realms beyond the Eye of Terror, and still Ahriman walks his path of exile towards the promise of a distant salvation. Perhaps Ahriman has already tried to undo the damage of the past and failed, but, as the light of the Imperium gutters, his steps take him ever closer to the answer he has sought for so long. The shadow of secrets, lost since before humans even stared at the stars, lingers on the horizon in the elusive Black Library, calling Ahriman ever on down the road into the future. flames light that road, and the bones of the dead and the ashes of murdered worlds pave its course. None except perhaps Tzeentch, who watches all and laughs the song of fate, know what awaits Ahriman at the end of that road. But if he should reach its end, the universe will tremble. End quote. Ahzek Ahriman is one of the most splendid models in the range, and I can state it is always a treat to see him across the board. And not only for the visuals, but also for the confusion he can rain down on his opponents. Usually me. For Ahriman is one of the few wielders of the warp that I would even consider coming close to the power and subtlety of Eldar Othran himself. For there are really only so many names one can throw out when it comes to powerful psykers in the setting. Taking the Emperor out of the situation, of course. Tigurius of the Ultramarines, Calistarius, who then became Mephiston of the Blood Angels, and of course, Ahriman. Yet these younger librarians are just that, powerful. Perhaps as powerful as Ahzek himself. But it is not only in power that the magician should be judged. Like many, a librarian is considered the equal of a farseer in sheer power, but it is in knowledge, wisdom, and experience that the true masters of the warp come to the fore. For Mephiston or Tigurius may be able to duel with Ahriman in a direct confrontation, but in a protracted war, where subtlety, nuanced names, and numerology come into question, then surely Ahriman is the master. It is for this reason that Ahzek Ahriman is seen as one of the 4 champions of the Chaos Gods. There are more powerful beings aplenty, such as the Demon Princes and, of course, the Demon Primarchs. But in these 4 individuals, the role of champion of their sponsor is most pronounced. For the Grandfather, Nurgle, it is said to be Typhus. For the Lord of Blood and Skulls, Khorne, it is Khan the Betrayer. And for the Prince of Pleasure, Slanesh, it is seen to be Lucius, the Eternal. But for Tzeentch, it is irrefutably Ahzek Ahriman. And trust me, we shall see lots more of him on the channel as time goes by. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Ahzek Ahriman of the Thousand Suns. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.